Basically, for those folks who don't know who I am, I've been doing congressional and senatorial investigations for probably 20 years, basically chasing corrupted persons in our government. And that's started out a long time ago. I won't go into all of the background of how I got involved with that, but I became a federal witness in that 1985-87 period of time with the Iran-Contra inquiries, for those of you that are old enough to recall that, as a matter of fact, because that's been about 25 years ago, I guess, at this time. And I had gotten mixed up into the middle of Iran-Contra Central Intelligence, supplying of weapons and drugs, et cetera, with by simply merging my company with an existing company in Atlanta, Georgia, that in fact was a covert front for supplying of weapons for all these random wars that the intelligence agencies of the United States like to maintain worldwide, and of course lining the pockets of all those guys that are supplying the weapons on the behalf of our what I refer to the secret government, so to speak. Has nothing to do with the people that you think are running the United States. And that's been a real roller coaster ride for myself. What happened was that I was like I say, we merged our company. All of a sudden, I was in the middle of this stuff, and I couldn't believe what was going on. These guys, including major generals, et cetera, coming in and out of my company, which, by the way, was a toy company. And the idea was for them to use the toy company as a covert front for all this crazy stuff that they're doing on a regular basis. And to my surprise, once we got into investigating it, myself and my lawyer, in an attempt to reclaim my business, which they had basically taken over and completely stolen, when I got into it, we found out that they do this stuff all the time, that they actually will take companies over and use them as reasons for being in, visiting a country, or going in and out of countries, et cetera, and carrying out their supplying of the weapons and all. So, if you guys have any questions, I would jump in, please, if you will, if you have anything you want to ask. But the main point of today's program, on my side of it, is to let people know that there is an extremely radical element that is on the offing, and that is Planet X, which is, and some people call it Nibiru. A couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, after doing 25 to 27 years of investigations into government fraud and theft and all of the related bandits that are running the country up there, and being involved directly with about 8 or 10 of some of the biggest investigations in the last 20 years, I realized that we were missing huge amounts of money, much more money than what is normally vanishing out of Washington, D.C., into the pockets of those guys that are on the bad side of the fence. We had gotten used to chasing multi-millions dollars of financing that and fraud, bank fraud, and like I say, the sales of weapons and the exchange for weapons right out of the White House with drug dealers on a huge scale. And we got used to investigating that. But all of a sudden, it dawned on me that we were starting to lose much more money, and I couldn't figure out how that money where it could go, because we're talking trillions of dollars, not even millions or billions, but a couple of major persons in our government had admitted that trillions had disappeared out of their budgets, and they had no idea where it was going. You guys there? Are you guys still on the line there, or you fall asleep?
Yeah, sorry.
I lose you guys?
No,
oh,
I had myself on.
Okay, go ahead.
I was trying to talk. I was like, wait a second, what's wrong?
So,
Quite the
I
introduction, man. Keep going.
Excuse me?
Absolutely. So how I guess to what level is this still going on today? I mean,
Okay. Well, here's the point. This is what happened. About 3 years ago, when I had information coming across my desk as it related to this giant sums of money vanishing. No longer were we talking about a senator or a congressman pulling off some kind of a scam one way or another to get a couple $1 million for his summer house in Tahiti or something like that. We were looking at, to my shock, Donald Rumsfeld, who was in charge of the Defense Department at this particular point in time, on the day before the 9/11 event took place. He came, he was sitting answering questions before a congressional committee with whom I had done work, and he said that over the last few years, it's been realized that $2.3 trillion had vanished from the Defense Department budget. It's just unaccounted for. And we're talking with a T, $1 trillion. And that's mind-boggling, because you can't even money launder $1 trillion. How would you ever even do that? If it was just a regular theft of, like I say, of a few million, that's one thing. But for $2.3 trillion to vanish out of their budgeting at the Defense Department is like a mind-boggling. And they're also talking about the timing here. Now, this was the day before the 9/11 the event would. Okay, so
I was just going to ask, right?
Right, and so obviously we never heard that story again. I mean, we have it on videotape of him doing this, admitting that they lost a couple of $1 trillion. But of course, the next day was 9/11. End of story. We never heard it again, and we were occupied, of course, with all of the aftermath of we'll call it a terrorist event. I won't get into that tonight, but I'm sure it was not an outside terrorist event, but that it was probably a what we call a false flag operation carried out by some of our own corrupted persons in government here. But as a matter of fact, coincidentally, again, and I say that word completely in a joking manner, the missile that they told us it was an airplane, but the missile that went into the side of the Pentagon was right into the building area where all of the paperwork for this vanished $2.3 trillion would have been held. That, I guess, was rather also kind of coincidental. So that was all gone anyhow. I guess if anybody was going to try to look into it, they would have a hard time doing that.
Right. Yeah, just use a missile to destroy the evidence, sure.
So I'm sitting here and I'm looking and I see, what's going on with that kind of money disappearing? Then the lady who was theoretically in charge of oversight with the Federal Reserve, she had sat before the Congress a short time later and said that somebody brought it up. One of the congressmen asked her what was the story behind the fact that there's been $9 trillion, again, $9 trillion with a T, that seemingly is off the books and misplaced relative to some loans and money that was put into from our Federal Reserve here in the United States, lent out to the European banks. It's $9 trillion that had vanished. And then following that up, or running almost side by side, we had Representative Ron Paul had stepped forward and he had said, went to the Federal Reserve and said, there's too much information indicating that all the gold is gone from Fort Knox.
Yep.
You know, and he said, we want to request on the behalf of the Senate, the Congress, and the American people a complete audit on the gold. Well, the Federal Reserve System, which was set up so many years ago, was specifically set up in a manner such that the Senate and the Congress and the United States citizens have no right whatsoever to ever request an audit. It was specifically set up that way.
Yep.
The Federal Reserve, which has nothing to do with the United States government, that comes to a big surprise for a lot of people, but the Federal Reserve is a group of private banks that oversees and runs and controls all of the funding of the United States government, as well as oversees the Fort Knox gold inventory. All right? And they are private banks. It is not a division of the United States government officially, period. End of story. And so when they set it up to be the people that did control, the bankers that did control all of our money and financing, et cetera, they set it up specifically. So they told Ron Paul and senators and congressmen to just get out of their face and go away because they weren't even going to talk to them. They had no right to even ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so I'm sitting here with starting again. I had about 8 or 9 months at that time into looking into where all this money was going, and I couldn't imagine my wildest dreams what could go on with that. You just can't, you can't load that up and take it someplace. Like I say, you can't money launder trillions of dollars. So I then, of course, had constantly receiving information from people all over the different levels of our government and friends of mine out of the intelligence agencies and what have you. And this going back, a full over 25 years. And someone came to me and reminded me of the underground facilities that were being built all the same period of time. By the way, the funny stuff started seriously about 1983 to 85, which was a period of time when we were into that Iran-Contra stuff. Ronald Reagan was president. George Bush, who was really running the show, was vice president. And all of this, a lot of changes in huge projects, Defense Department money. They were talking about doing this Star Wars initiative where they're going to put up a whole bunch of series of satellites that was going to track when a flea farts in Omaha, could tell you where the flea was located and all that kind of stuff. And they were going to track everything that the Russians or the Red Chinese were going to do. They were going to be able to track it down and all of that. That was all this Star Wars gobbledygook. Which I found out later, everything that they did put up in the Star Wars operations, these telescopes and satellites and transmission sensing devices and all of that, were actually aimed outwards. They were not aimed at the Earth to keep track of things. They were aimed outward to outer space. And of course, like I say, it also was a time when they started doing what was called the continuity of government. They had huge expansions of what was called continuity of government. And that was where these underground facilities came back to surface. All right? So what we're talking about in terms of there's over 100 of them in the United States today, and these are entire small cities, so to speak, underground all over the place in America, and they are specifically survival locations or facilities for limited numbers of people. Although with 100 of them, and some of them are pretty large, there a lot of people could be underground and live under there for quite a while. So at that point, and I was really very much up to speed on these, so to speak, because going back to the 90s, I had myself, with a friend of mine, snuck down under the Denver airport, which for many years had been rumored to be a huge underground operation, a huge facility like we're talking about. And on the very first week that it was opened in 1995, I had already been bombarded with people telling me what was going on underground there. And I didn't even understand it, couldn't imagine really at that point what they were talking about. Why would we be building giant underground like rats and moles under the ground at a tremendous cost factor? So I did sneak down underneath, and I got pictures way back in the 90s. But that was something I was involved with. Investigations with Sonny Bono on drugs and smuggling right out of the White House, and investigating it with him and 2 or 3 other people. I was working with Henry Gonzalez on some other bank fraud things that we were trying to chase at that time. So these crazy pictures of underground facilities was something that I had just put on the back shelf and hadn't gotten into in terms of trying to find out what was really going on. So I then moved into a situation where I was trying to figure out what would it be that would cause us to be so concerned with the need for underground survival facilities at a tremendous cost. So someone said to me, how about the stuff that's going on in China and in Russia and Red China and in England, a couple of European countries at the same time? And I said, well, what are you talking about? And they said, no, the underground, same situation, underground hideouts. So apparently the Russians in 2010 put out a mandate of their own that they were going to create 5,000 underground facilities, not big ones like we have in America, but 5,000 of them, and a couple of them were going to be big, and some of them were, a couple of the larger ones had already been underway for a while. And they were going to have these accomplished by the end of 2013, coming into the first of 2014. And I checked into it, and I found out that they had, in fact, completed it, that they did have 5,000 of these facilities as shelter survival locations for many thousands of people. So now what we had is the Russians doing it, the same thing being done in Europe in several different countries. The Red Chinese had gone and started converting what was a couple of thousand underground tunnel facilities that literally had been in China going back 1,000 years. They're back in the old days of antiquity. They used to fight wars by running in and out of these underground tunnels back when they were still doing bows and arrows and throwing rocks at each other. But they had a lot of them started already, 1,000 of them. So the Red Chinese had gone in and updated those and completed them the same as we had in the United States here for our 100 and 103 or whatever we have here. So then
so
I really... yes.
Do they need a seed bank for this? Because I recently read that Russia was building a seed bank for all life on Earth.
Well, actually, now I'm not dead positive on Russia, but there is one that was built back in 2006. It's a huge international seed bank, which actually you have to You have to, and by the way, this is cooperatively done by the United States and several other nations cooperatively, and a lot of excuse me. I was going to say a lot of the funding came from not only, of course, just they steal it whenever they want money. They just steal it out of the covert black operations. Anyhow, nobody's allowed to look at it, so it's pretty easy money. But a good amount of that money was supplied by what's his name, the computer, the fellow and his wife that's so wealthy from the computer's success. Bill Gates. I'm sorry, just slipped his name. Bill Gates put in a lot, donated millions and millions of dollars just into that one seed bank, and I believe it's located in Denmark, actually. Now, there are 2 or 3 other locations of seed banks. Basically, what these are what you would call storage facilities to maintain the seeds necessary to replant the entire face of the earth when it's totally wiped out. That's basically the essence of it, to have the seeds necessary after some type of a total wipeout of the globe, and to actually have the seeds to replant everything necessary, like Noah's Ark, to regenerate the growing of all the products and plants and trees and everything when they've been wiped out from a global disaster. Now, there's, again, as I say, this one that I think is in Denmark, near Denmark. There's Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Iceland are all donating in terms of maintaining it. That's a large, pretty big facility. The one I think originally was, I don't remember, it was something like $20 million to get off the ground. They had millions of seeds in there as we speak. It's pretty well completed. It was started 2006 and it's done as we speak. Okay, so that adds to it. See, now we have these couple of giant seed vaults. We have all the major nations of the world secretly, not tremendously secret, but for the most part pretty much secret, building these underground facilities. Now, and filling them, by the way, for the last 5 years, filling them with the freeze-dried survival foods by the thousands of tons, truckloads after truckloads. And we're talking, by the way, these facilities, I'm just back to the United States, their facilities that they've created are so huge that they have 18-wheelers, 40-footers, drive side by side in the roadways underground, and complete railways, which are actually magnetic levitated railways interconnecting many of the facilities from one state to another. Traveling at the trains are traveling at 400 to 500 miles an hour. They're magnetic levitated, nothing touched the tracks. They're like the good ones that they have in Japan that they have already installed above ground, traveling at 400 miles an hour, but the ones down under in the underground facilities are even faster. There is absolutely no way for them to wreck, so to speak. There's nothing on the tracks, nothing crosses the tracks, and when you get in it to go to another location, they just seal the doors like a subway in New York City. Close the doors, you sit down, belt yourself in, and it just goes swoosh, and again, it's up to 500 miles an hour in a few seconds, and then they slow down, and you get out at your next location. The construction of these underground facilities has been done with gigantic drills that are mind-boggling. And by the way, the Chinese have bigger ones than we do, And the ones that we have, the smallest ones, can go in through the side of a mountain. They travel 6 or 7 miles an hour, digging, literally like drilling a huge hole. Yes, sir.
You're cutting off there, buddy.
Oh, I am? Okay.
Yeah, okay, it seems to be better.
I heard him just fine.
Am I okay now?
Maybe it was me. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh-oh, your head
Yeah,
is cutting
I've seen those drills you're talking about, and it had an Air Force logo on it. I don't know. I think they were in Nevada, but yeah, they were drilling underground with this just big drill.
This all completely reminds me of that Ozarks from that Jesse Ventura conspiracy theory episode. That's crazy.
Yes, Jesse's. That, by the way, and Jesse went into one location there, for a little bit underground. It is in the Ozarks, the one you're talking about. It's slick. What they did was that's been there. That one has actually been there for a few years, and it's been labeled as an underground general storage area. But when they're ready to utilize it the way they're planning to utilize it, along with the rest of them, it will be, full time as a survival living facility for the limited few. I have finished doing. It took me 3 years of my investigation on this alone. Now, I have to say something out in front, because I had dealt with Senate and congressional leaders for so many years, and I literally was a federal witness. I have testified personally before the United States Senate Intelligence Committee in Washington, D.C. One of my huge reports that I did, I believe, is what got Sonny Bono murdered on the ski slopes, because we were 15 days away from opening up a congressional investigation into drug smuggling and weapons supplies out of Washington, D.C., connected to the intelligence community.
Right, it would be the CIA, like they say.
Absolutely. They had contacted us. I'd worked with Sonny, supplied him with an amazing array of information for about a year. He had called me, his offices contacted me about December the 15th or something like that, and they said, we are all set to go. Sonny and the rest of the Congress is going on their Christmas holiday. The first thing we're doing back here in Washington, and by the way, I was living in Los Angeles at that time, they said the first thing we are doing after the Christmas holidays, when Sonny gets back, we have the investigation ready to start. We wanted to make sure that you were prepared to come into Washington and move forward with us on it. I told them I was excited to do it. I was ready to do it. Let's go, because we had fooled around with this thing for over a year in terms of just setting it up. And the investigation was not only going to be a congressional inquiry, but it was going to be with subpoena powers. And normally they never do that, and they don't permit it, because what happens, then you have some senators and congressmen that are carrying out these different inquiries with the ability to force government persons to answer the question, do you know anything about drugs coming into our Air Force bases? Do you know anything about this picture that Mr. Fletcher supplied us, which is a motion picture of the delivery of narcotics on a United States aircraft and being offloaded at air bases at the Homestead Air Force Base? Are you familiar? And with subpoena powers, they can say, answer the question or we will put you in jail until you decide to cooperate. Right. They don't usually do that. And Sonny's people told me we have subpoena power set up. And so I said, great, when are we talking about? They said it'd be about the 15th or the 17th after they come back of January. After they finish the Christmas holidays, once they get back, we'll get back to you, and then we'll go from there. I said, great. 10 days after that telephone conversation, Sonny Bono was murdered on the top of the ski slopes. He was
Yeah.
pistol whipped to death and dragged up against a tree, and everybody was told that he was an idiot and ran into a tree.
Right.
And end of story. Ha ha, Sonny Bono, and he's out of here, and that was the end. Now, the bad guys involved with this stuff, okay, now we're getting away from my subject, but I'll get back to that right away. But the bad guys that are involved with these things, they had to eliminate Sonny over the Christmas holiday. End of story. They could not allow him to come back because they couldn't allow the investigation to ever begin with the first gaveling of the opening of the committee investigation. They could not do that because if Sonny had been eliminated after that, they would have to continue the inquiry.
Right.
So they had to stop the inquiry. The only way to do it was to stop and eliminate Sonny Bono, and they murdered him on the ski slopes. That was the end of it. No one out of his office who I had dealt with for 4 years. I used to go in, when I went into Washington, I would sit down and have lunch with the guys, all right? Well, have a cup of coffee, whatever the situation was. I had dealt with them for 4 years leading up to this thing. From the moment that Sonny was dead on the ski slopes, no one ever spoke to me again out of Sonny's offices.
Wow. I guess not. Wow. Not surprised.
End of story. They would not even answer. I mean, I was friends. The guy that run his office, Frank Cullen, his main primary assistant, and the administrative assistants are the guys that really run the offices for the Senate and the Congress. You know, they're number one guys. He and I went back several years. He never spoke to me again.
Right.
Now, I found out there was 2 or 3 other close people to Sonny that had the same situation where nobody ever spoke to him again. Even personal friends of Sonny's. So they put the serious scare on everybody that was working with Sonny. So anyhow, we get back to the subject matter. So we have all these facilities underground. We were talking about the drills. The drills are so large that a single drill goes into the side of a mountain, comes back out, and you could drive an 18-wheeler into the hole that they just made. That's how big they are. Now, they have gotten bigger, and the ones in China make ours look like toys. The ones that the Chinese have developed, stealing our original designs, of course, you know, by stealing the designs that we had created our drills with. What they have is the biggest one that impressed me, and I, by the way, have photographs of all this stuff and live footage and what have you of inside these underground facilities. And by the way, I want to tell everybody right now, particularly people that don't know me, and there's some arenas I'm very, very well known, and others may not know who I am. My website on the computer, my website is bobfletcherinvestigations.com. It's Bob Fletcher Investigations, one word, .com. Go on there, you'll see all of the reports and what I've done and my history, my background, and you will see that I have DVD reports on about 8 or 9 of my biggest investigations, and of course, and including, by the way, a 2-year investigation that I did on Sonny's death, which absolutely proves that he was murdered. But again, we'll shift gears back to today. I have, after 3 years working, we've just finally released the DVD. It's a double DVD package. It's actually 2 discs of 2 hours each. It's a 4-hour information disc, educational disc on what we're getting at right now. I have included in there live footage and photographs of the underground facilities, the drills, the locations, and everything I'm going to talk about tonight is completely documented the visual DVDs that are available. So if you want to know what's going to happen, and I'm getting around to the point of what we are actually talking about here, when you want to know all of it and understand what's taking place, get this DVD. It'll completely set you back on your heels. So now let me get back to subject matter. We've got all these underground facilities and these giant drills. The Chinese one I was talking about, I want to finish that. The Chinese, they have a drill that is actually 3 drills across, face the front end. If you're facing them, they're like huge circular drills. The one on the left and the one on the right are big enough for an 18-wheeler to drive into the hole that one of them would make. They have one drill that is one of those huge drills on each side, and then in the middle is one larger drill that if you were inclined to do so, you could stack an 18-wheeler on top of another 18-wheeler and drive in through that thing. So you have 3 across the face of the drills that they've been using in China. I do have photographs of inside the Chinese tunnels. I have the information and pictures on the ones in Russia, and we have, of course, the complete, actually live footage of inside the tunnels and the underground hideouts in the United States. Some of these are created where they're primarily going to grow greens and foodstuffs underground, complete setup, greenhouse configurations underground to be able to continue fresh vegetables and animals and fish underground in these specialized growing facilities. And again, they're all interconnected by highways big enough to have drag races on them. And they're mind-boggling. I do have a couple of these photos that I'm talking about are on my website. You actually can go look up the website and then look where it says photographs and a photo gallery, I think is what it says. And we have several photographs, wonderful pictures of down inside these facilities that have been totally filled with freeze-dried survival foods. Now, I'm still, when I was investigating this, I was still in a quandary. What in the world on earth would it be to cause these people, number one, to stop stealing as much as they were for their own pockets and start putting all this money into these rat holes underground, these survival facilities, which includes, by the way, one that recently had been completed under the Capitol building that will hold 3,000 people. And they've expanded underground facilities at the White House. In other words, entire facilities for living that weren't there before that are now under the White House. Not that the president's ever going to be there, because more than likely he's going to be long gone before the stuff hits the fan in one of the bigger, better facilities. They had taken the NORAD facility, which is the one that's inside the Granite Mountain for 40 years. It's been there, that was always there and doing all the NORAD warning facilities for the possibility of an invasion, a nuclear invasion, from either Russia or China, and they're worried about it for so many years about that, and they had built this huge underground NORAD facility. And by the way, some of these are like 20 stories down into the ground. We're not talking about a one level. It's like really hard to comprehend. But the NORAD facility, a little while, was taken apart. They took all the high-level electronic tracking devices and equipment and moved it into another air base several miles away. I think it's called the Peterson Air Base, just off the top of my head. All of this, again, is in the DVDs that I'm talking about. Everything we're talking about is covered in the DVD. By the way, it's called Nibiru. The Incoming of Nibiru is what the title of the DVD is. Because what I finally...
Yeah, I was seeing that on your website.
Yes. Excuse me?
I was seeing that on your website. Order the new Incoming Nibiru DVD from the store.
Right, and that's the one that literally is 4 hours. It's rather tedious, and believe it or not, we had cut it down like an hour and a half, and I hated to do it. I had to take so much out, but the bottom line is everything will be explained very thoroughly and completely in this DVD. We try to answer every possible question that would come up. Now, let me get back on track. Here's where, so I'm sitting here and I'm saying, well, what would it be that would scare the leaders of all these nations so badly that they actually would be building facilities for themselves with our money, of course, being kept completely secret for the most part, and people kept completely away. You can't go to these. And by the way, I do have a list of the locations of most of the facilities on my website where they are in America. But what is it that would ever scare all the leaders of the world to go about creating and spending this money for 20 years? And somebody came to me at a high level and simply said, you know, it's probably Planet X, Nibiru. And you know, and I said, oh, I had heard about that. You know, everybody had heard a little bit about that thing, and it's one of those things where automatically when somebody says, you know, it's called Planet X because it's that's Roman numeral 10. Actually, it doesn't mean X like in mysterious. It actually means Roman numeral 10 for the 10th planet, and that it's on this huge, elongated orbit going way out past Pluto and then coming back in, and that it's like a 3,000-year orbit, an elliptical orbit, and it will be coming back through. Well, again, I like everybody else. I didn't even want to hear it because I thought, oh, this is one of these things that when somebody says it, you expect somebody else or in the background you want to listen to, you know, you wanted to hear the spooky music to play background when somebody starts talking about quote-unquote Planet X coming back. But the bottom line was this. I asked a couple of people, I said, is there any possibility to it? Is there a truth to this thing? Who's studying this? Where can I find out about this thing? I mean, if this is, and that, because then it did make sense. If in fact there was something like a huge, catastrophic, intergalactic kind of a situation on its way in, that did make sense. As crazy as it sounds when you first hear it, but it only sounds crazy if you don't know anything about it. So I spent about 9 months contacting, getting with everybody that ever had written a paper on this thing to find out if it was real, astronomers, and all the stories connected with it. And I found out about a fellow named Sitchin, who back in the 60s had said that he had deciphered 2,000 clay tablets from the nation of Sumeria many years ago. In the 60s, the clay tablets were 4,000 years old, and once they deciphered them, it tells a story in great depth of this Planet X, Nibiru, coming back around every 3,600 years, and that was what caused Noah's floods. And that was what caused all these biblical descriptions of the stars falling from the sky and killing 100,000 soldiers back during the time of the Israelis, and all of the biblical references to a thing called wormwood, which is this giant planet that would return every once in a while to destroy and clean off the face of the earth. And so I'll summarize it by saying this. After contacting the people, getting all of the information I could from every possible direction, astronomical, scientific, biblical scholars, etc., etc., I came to the conclusion that there is no question that Nibiru, Planet X, is on its way back in, that Ronald Reagan discovered it, was given the information by his people, and George Bush, approximately 1983. That was when everything started changing. That was when they finalized all these, started finalizing and completing these tunnels. And that's what it is all about. All the money has gone into constructing these survival facilities and filling the facilities with foodstuffs to maintain the elite, limited few that are going to have tickets to get down underground when the stuff is about ready to hit the fan. And when Nibiru comes back around, and by the way, here's the problem. There's nobody in the world yet since I've been talking about this, and now for about 60, 90 days since we've released the DVD, we've not had a single person that can answer the question, why are they building the underground facilities, and why have they filled them with foodstuffs so that they were ready as of last month, as of the beginning of this year. The foodstuffs and the facilities are like 98% done. Why are they putting the foods in today because a lot of people say, oh, it might be 50, 100 years. No, it's not. It's on its way back in. They would not fill it with the foods. They would not be stealing all the gold and stealing all the money and putting it into these underground facilities so that if it happened next week, that they would be able to get underground, okay? And it would be filled. It is already filled. All of them are ready for use. Tonight, as I am speaking, all these facilities are ready. And if there's anybody that can come up with a different reason, I want to know about it. Because here's what's happened. And I contacted two major groups, so to speak, that have been doing the following the Planet X thing long before I even knew it existed, I got to tell you. They've been following this thing for long, like 30 years, 20 years. They agree. They disagree on a couple of things, but they agree that it will be coming back probably in less than 5 years. It may be coming back as early as being first seen next December, this coming December.
That's exactly what I heard. An inside source told me that it's likely going to happen at the end of this year.
Yes, here's the and now again there are a couple of disagreements in terms of a lot of little technicalities, and which all make sense, and they all are very intelligently logical and potentially proper. The consensus is the earliest time would be that it would be visually seen in December as a new star in the sky, out there someplace, wherever, and coming and getting bigger every week. And that it would pass, that's, again, now I'm talking December, January, February, March, and that it would be coming closest to causing the problems to Earth in March and April. All right, so it would be seen in December. It would be coming in, and then what's going to happen? It will, and by the way, this planet is been calculated to be 5 times the size of Earth. So it's pretty big. I thought it was
3 times.
No, it's physically. Well, of course, actually, nobody knows. I wouldn't argue. What I'm saying is that the bulk of the guys doing the astronomers that have done the physical reaction that it has caused outlying planets, etc., things of that sort, they can calculate mass and blah, blah, blah. Okay, but also going by the descriptions, the description of the size of it that has been documented in every single historic scripture that goes back a couple of thousand years. It's in the Bible. It's in all the Oriental astronomers actually wrote and tracked it coming around back in the year 10,057. And they kept track of it. They logged it in. The monks on the mountainside in Tibet logged it in. All of these people that have, and the Sumerian clay tablets, all right? And then there's another fantastic piece that I won't get into too much that I do explain in the DVD, but there was a bronze plate that's called the Sky Disk that was located in Germany. In Germany, it is dated to the year 3,600 years ago. 3,600 years ago, they did this disc, and it's the equivalent of, it's about 12 inches across. It's made of bronze and highlighted in gold, laminated in gold, and it shows the solar eclipse, and it's completely dated because it shows the locations of constellations and stars, which in today's computerized astronomy, you can take those stars, feed them into the new computer programs, and it will tell you the exact day to the day that this thing was created. And what it is actually a picture, if you will. You would call it, if it was done with paints, it would be a painting. It is a plaque, a disc plaque, 12 inches across, that has a picture of the sun, the moon, star constellations and their locations, and the fact that it's a solar eclipse taking place, but you can see both the sun and the moon, so they know that it was not the moon doing the eclipse, and it is Nibiru. But the big deal is the exact date of this thing was 3,600 years ago when it was created. It was discovered at an ancient site similar to Stonehenge.
I
only
think
it was
I saw this before. That's
only
right.
it was in Germany, and they had this disc, etc. And I go into all that, and I show it, and I have pictures of it, and all the rest of that business at the museum, and da-da-da-da-da. All of that is also in the, it's one of the reasons that the DVD set is 4 hours. It's because I wanted to cover everything that's connected, and I start out with the money and come right on up to the day that this is expected to be coming back. So the people that have been studying it from an astronomical science view have decided, and first off, again, we get back to size, calculated it to be, okay, well, I'm going to really put it this way, that it's either 3 to 5 times size, but the feeling is it's probably as big as 5 times the size of Earth. It also has like 4 moons of its own. It's like a secondary system with 4 moons traveling with it and coming back together as a group. Now, the devastating part of this thing is a combination of things. There will not be a collision of it hitting Earth. That's not going to happen, period. I mean, it might, but that's not the feeling. But it will cause an eclipse of the sun at one point in time, at least. When it comes in, it will come in and go around the sun, the same as a typical comet will do. Halley's Comet comes in every 75 years, goes around the sun, goes back out, and he doesn't come back for 75 years. There was a comet that was discovered a few years ago, was called the Hale-Bopp comet. It came close by, passed behind the sun in 1997, if I'm not mistaken, and it came 97, went around, and went back out. Now that one and this is important, that one is on a 4,200-year orbit. And the reason I say it's important was when I first heard that the Nibiru would be possibly a 3,000-year comet or a 3,000-year orbit, not being tremendously schooled in astronomy at that time, I thought, that's kind of goofy. What, you're trying to tell me this thing goes out, 1,850 years and then comes back 1,850 years, to constitute a 3,000-year orbit. I said, well, that sounds stupid. But when I found out that the Hale-Bopp is on a longer one of 4,200 years, well, then I was wrong. That's not stupid because it's a reality in terms of the traveling of a comet. Now, this thing is not a comet. I have to reiterate this. So its tail, and this thing will have a tremendous tail dragging behind it of space junk, meteorites, and big pieces of rock and what have you being dragged along behind this thing. Believe it or not, Halley's Comet, the tail is 24 million miles long. Now, the Nibiru tail, which again is not going to be frozen ices and pieces of dirt, it's going to be meteors and meteorites, if you will. When it comes in, passes around the sun, then the Earth on its regular orbit will pass through the tail 2 times. So we will be bombarded with asteroids and things of that sort, pretty good-sized stuff, 2 different times. The first time when it goes around behind the sun, and then we will pass through the tail. And then we will continue going around. It will pass and most likely go back out again. And when it goes back out, we will go one more time on our regular orbit through the tail, actually a second time. And it will take, according to the mathematics and the size and the angularity of this thing passing through the tail, it will probably take about 1 hour for the Earth to go through which is going to be a meteor storm like nobody's seen since the time of the Bible.
No, I remember studying up on what Nancy Leader had to say from Zeta Talk, and she claimed that the Planet X is made out of mainly iron, and that the tail is made out of mainly iron dust, and it's red, and when it passes us, it's going to get the whole planet like dusty, of course, with the meteors and everything, but it's going to turn all the water red.
And I pretty much agree with all of that. That I believe that to be totally true. It's always been depicted in all of the graphics. And by the way, you'd include stuff on the walls of cave walls, for crying out loud, on this thing. But the Chinese have pictured it, and again, the Chinese astronomers that did this back in the year 1050 or whatever it was, when the Chinese astronomers did their work for the emperor, if they screwed up or they did something that was considered to be an error, they cut their heads off.
Yeah.
They just cut their heads off. So you're not talking about this isn't a hoax that somebody made and came up with 3,000 years ago. In case those of us have to realize, these people weren't screwing around with putting together crazy hoaxes back in the year 2000. But so in terms of coloration, it has been depicted for many years in many scriptures, like I say, from the hillsides of the Tibetan mountains by the monks 1,000, 2,000 years ago or whatever.
I've read about that, yeah.
They've all depicted it with a red tail glowing off on 2 sides. I would completely agree the likelihood of it being iron ore blowing off of this thing as it travels, through space that would make it look like it had two red wings coming off of it, and that's very likely. And again, there also is, of course, talking about in the Bible, when this thing comes back around, it describes the eclipse of the sun, etc., and it talks about the waters turning red. And if we go through what literally would be a rain shower of organic, actually iron ore dust, which is orange, that basically is probably exactly true in terms of the water would all be covered, although it could be other things on the water. Now, here's what we're looking at. People say, how is it going to affect, and also it's two important points. One is people want to know, when will we feel the effect of it, all right? If you watched the news last night, you saw one of the effects of it. The weather for the last 2 to 4 years on the globe has been the most bizarre weather in 1,000 years, all right, in terms of drought, rain, floods, earthquakes. This is a great one that nobody's paid attention to. Going back a couple of years ago, it started up, but there are like 35 to 40 volcanoes erupting today in the globe. All right? Now, they're not making the news. Well, they do every once in a while. You actually see ABC and NBC saying, the big one is blowing up in Iceland. They just had another one back in Japan, and they had another one in in India. But if you went in and did just looked at the geological reports, you'll see that they have as many as 30 to 40 volcanoes presently erupting. They're marked as a erupting volcano. All right, that's something brand new. At Yellowstone National Park, last month, they always have a lot of small earth movement at Yellowstone. But last month they had, I don't remember what it was like 200 or more individual, what they call swarms of earthquakes at Yellowstone. They also, in June and August this last year, the underground became so hot at Yellowstone, they had to block off about 3 or 4 miles of the regular roadways because they had been turned into maple syrup from the heat underground at the Yellowstone Park.
Right.
All right.
I remember hearing about that too. I'm actually from Wyoming as well.
And additionally, and I'm not too far. I'm in Idaho. If it goes, I'm out of here. I'll tell you that much. Anyhow.
Actually, on a positive note, I remember reading that Nancy
let me
Leader
put it
said
this way. Let me put it this way. I'm positive.
Yellowstone's not going to erupt.
Well, I wouldn't take a $10 bet on that one. But here's the point. It's already also affecting every planet in the last 2 years. Every planet in our solar system, starting out by Pluto and coming back in, has started to change its temperatures. They're all going up. Their surface gases and dust storms on all of the planets are varied and are changing and altering, and there are dust storms taking place that never took place in going back 1,000 years. All of the planets are being affected by something already. Some of them are jiggling and moving and being affected in their orbits, where they're coming around and going maybe a little farther out and then coming back or whatever. Slight variations. All right.
It's man-made global warming.
Yeah, right, for sure. And by the way, talking about the global warming, okay, this was officially declared as the hottest year in the history of the globe this last year. All right? That's a reality. The bottom line is also glaciers I did a serious study on the glaciers. So because I got aimed by a variety of scientists over the last 2 years while I've been studying this thing, when I would read papers, et cetera, and I would be turned to, go to this, look at this reference, do this reference, and I studied an entire, I think it was like a 2-hour program done originally by a photographer, and then he brought in scientists because he realized what he was photographing, and that was that the ice caps and these glaciers are melting from underneath. The water is literally, the melting is taking place from underneath and coming out. Obviously, all the water that comes from the glaciers, and et cetera, all of that eventually goes into the ocean. And in case you were not aware of, and I bet you weren't, as we speak today in Miami Beach, a couple of about 7 months ago, maybe a year ago, but they finally had to spend millions of dollars in Miami Beach installing water pumps because the water has raised the elevation of the surf at Miami Beach has been brought up so high, all primarily to glacier ice melts, that during the high tide in Miami Beach, every single day when they have high tide, it is flooding 5 to 6 blocks into the city of Miami Beach. And they have had to, excuse me, let me get a drink here quickly. Hold on a moment.
Okay.
They literally have had to put millions of dollars of pumps to salvage the city of Miami Beach from the store, so that the storefronts wouldn't all be destroyed.
Sounds like it's not become like Indonesia.
It's the point is the water has come up that high. You know, people say, oh well, I don't think. Well, and how much is it going to take before that melts, and how long will it? Oh, that'd be 10 years, and at this rate, and all that rate, and everything. No, baloney, folks. It's done as we speak. While I am talking now, the water is so high at Miami Beach that they have to put pumps in for the high tide every day today. Now, they've been in there for at least 6 months, maybe even 8 or 9 months now, pumping the water. They just automatically switch on at high tide and try to keep it out.
To be honest, that's the last of the problems that people in Florida are going to have to worry about. If you're in Florida, it's not the best place you want to be, or New Jersey, or the West Coast.
Well, yeah, Florida. No, Florida is even worse. See, I lived there. I lived in half of my life in Florida, and my son and one of my boys is there, works there, has been there for. Matter of fact, you'll get a kick out of this. He manages the biggest recording studio in the United States in Florida, and been there for 30 years. I used to be in the music business. I was the promotion director for the southeast part of the United States for MCA Records. I introduced Elton John to the United States, and been on the road with the Who, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, this is before the government decided to mess around with me. Okay, so much for that. The planet itself, when it comes close enough, it already is affecting the sun. The sun's going crazy. Everybody's, all these phony, lying people out of NASA and everything, saying, "Gee, we don't understand what's going on with this, and we don't know why that's happening." They're lying. They know where it is. They know what it is. By the way, the Vatican knows what it is, and is completely involved with keeping it as quiet as they can, along with our corrupted governments, because, and I'll give you, this is a wonderful little story that, again, I didn't know until I got into this. A couple of years ago, the Vatican built a huge infrared telescope, all right, and they run it, oversee it. It's being run, and of course, scientifically overseen by astronomers of the highest level.
Right.
But it's located in Arizona.
Is this
and
the one they named? It's called Lucifer or something?
Yes, sir. They named it Lucifer, and it directly relates to, as the same as Lucifer does, it directly relates to Nibiru, the planet coming back in that's going to cause so much grief. And you see, Nibiru does not have its own light at all, so it's a reflective body. You couldn't see it if it was in outer space with nothing between you and it, and you looked out at night, you would not see it until it reaches a point where it's going to pick up enough light, like the reflection of the sun, and then you will start seeing it twinkling as a star coming back to cause all of its grief.
I hear that you'll only be able to see it with the naked eye with 2 weeks before it passes, and the few days it's actually passing, that's when it's going to be taking up like nearly the whole sky.
Well, yeah, the deal with it in terms of its size, again, being 5 times the size of the Earth, and it's believed that it will come up and will cause a solar eclipse again, like I said, for a period of time, and because it will be between us and the sun for a period of time. Then, and people don't realize it's so difficult to get a handle on this. As people say, why can't we see it? And if it's this big, et cetera, et cetera. Okay.
Right.
The planets are on what's a fairly flat plane in the solar system. It's called the plane of the ecliptic. And if you put your right arm out, straight out from your shoulder, you say, okay, that's parallel to the ground, and that is the plane of the ecliptic, where all the planets, give or take a few 100 million miles, so to speak, they're all pretty straight, flat on that, and going around doing their orbital thing, okay, and going around the sun. And then also the Earth is revolving on its axis all the time. So you get double movement of the Earth, and you have the sun, which is unbelievably gigantic, to try and do a picture or a photo or something of that sort that would show it in some kind of a realistic comparative size. You can't do that. The distances are too far. The sun is too large in diameter, just gigantic in its diameter. Now, here's what's happening. You put your arm out, and you're representing out to the right of you, representing the flat plane of the ecliptic. If you go down about 12 or 8 inches, that would be approximately 30 degrees down, or 30-degree angle off of the ecliptic flat plane. It is said, and this is where you have 2 different groups in conflict. Some of the astronomers are feeling that this is going to be coming up on that kind of a 30-degree off of the flat plane that our planets are on. In that case, you have no idea when you're first going to see this thing. See, because it's not coming in like you could just say, oh, well, look, it would be to the right of Jupiter up there, or Saturn. You look up there, it's just going to be to the right. No, it may not be at all. And my understanding is that as we speak today, that it's completely on the opposite side of the sun, so you wouldn't see it no matter what. So
Right.
The idea of somebody saying, well, tell me where it is and I'll find it because I'm really good with my telescope. No, that's not going to happen. And people just can't get a handle on that. And like you said, it will probably be seen in the sky like a star in December. And then coming back, like I say, coming in, it will be getting bigger and bigger. Now, and then March and April. And the reason that I'm saying that is all of the studies going back when all of these previous sightings of this event was always in the March and April period of time. So what everybody is saying, and most everybody that's been studying it agrees, that it probably will be, again, March and April, so that if it doesn't appear this next December in the sky, which is considered to be most likely, the second most likely date would be another full year on the calendar of the next year, but it will be, again, visual in December, seriously passing close in March and April, because those are the dates and the period of time that it always previously had passed. So therefore, that's why we're not talking about August, we're not talking about next week, but they potentially are talking about next Christmas, the visual as a star, and then March and April, the problems.
So,
now, I believe, yes, sir.
Sorry to cut you. I have a bunch of questions here. I mean, so
all right, go ahead and ask, and let me see if I can answer them.
Yeah, I mean, because when this does come around, I would think what is the government going to do? I mean, obviously, are they going to try to bring about martial law to distract us? Or are they going to shut down the internet and the electricity? Or, I mean,
they're going to wait for martial law, and then
no. And as a matter of fact, let me give you exactly what I am sure will happen. Okay, and I'm just positive of this, and I would bet money, but you wouldn't be around for me to collect.
Right.
Okay. Here's what's going to happen. And I hope I'm wrong too. You know, you have me back in a year, and you can say, "Boy, are you the jerk of the month?" You know, you're the biggest fool we've ever had on. Okay, and that's fine. I'll be glad to come back. But then I'd probably just be telling you, you know, hold your breath because next year's coming.
Right.
All right. Anyhow, the bottom line is with this thing, they can never, ever announce that this even exists. The government cannot announce officially that this thing even exists out in Never Land. Although, you know, a lot of people missed it, but it was only a couple of, I'm going to say 60 days ago, that one of the big universities said they had absolutely identified 2 giant planets out past Pluto.
Oh, no, we heard this.
Yeah. Okay. Now, let me get back to where I'm at. Here's the government. They cannot at all tell at any time that this is coming. The moment you ever did that, there would be uncontrollable panic on the globe. And we're not just talking in New York City or Omaha. You know, we're talking. Where are you guys located? You're you're on the East Coast.
Northeast Virginia and the Poconos, yeah.
Yeah, are you up there? You're in the Poconos. Okay. I used to live in Asbury Park. All right. So,
okay. That's where my mom grew up in, Asbury Park.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's a dead city at this point in time. It just got pulverized again, so they'll never rebuild it, I don't think. Anyhow, okay, where were we? So we got the government situation. All right, they absolutely cannot tell the world at any time that, yep, there it is. Now, believe it or not, the Russians and the Chinese, they've had it on the regular news, but not to the extent of, go down in the basement because it's heading back into town. You know, but they have reported it, and, on several times in Russian television, they've been right on their news, and they came out and said, astronomers are watching this thing, and they're not sure, and maybe this and maybe that. But that's interesting. We're not getting any of that or much of it. We do have a little of that too, as a matter of fact.
So why are they doing that? Are they doing it to cover their own ass?
Well, that's just what it is. Nobody yet has gone to what they've done so far is make fun of it. Okay, right. But the point is this. Here's what they're going to have to do, and mark my words. This is what's going to happen. Sometime 4 months to 6 months prior to the point in time when thousands of astronomers are going to say, we see a new star. What's going on? All right? The government is going to have to declare martial law before that time.
Right.
All right? And now they're going to know, because they know, and they have infrared telescopes. They got satellites that they've already sent out years ago that are way out there, already taking some great pictures of it.
It's what most of these missions are for.
Absolutely, and the missions, and I got news. For every mission you know about, there's 10 that you'll never heard about and will never hear about. Okay, trust me on that one. So, and most of the time when they talk about having weapons, talk about we're working on a new this or working on a new that, we already have had it for 15 years and have been using it when they come out and say we're starting to look at it. Okay, and then that's a reality. So get back to Nibiru and Uncle Sam. They're going to do a declaration of a national emergency qualifying for martial law in the United States. They have written in their own paperwork many years ago, whenever this situation was to arise, but I mean this situation, a situation where it was needed to have martial law, that it would have to be presented to the people in a manner such that they feared for their very existence, so that the government will more easily than not, have martial law accepted in our backyard. The American people would have to think that they are going to die, okay, if the martial law is not declared. And it will be one of three manners. It will either be an extreme terrorist event taking place in several cities in the United States simultaneously, or like a 9/11, but in 4 or 5 cities, or it will be an outbreak of a disease, like something like Ebola, or a general uprising among the people, such as a race riots out of control. All right. Now, all of these things is what I had figured would be applied to a national emergency martial law, and not all of them together. I didn't mean that, but one of these three, or even part of that is the possibility of a serious war with Russia or Russia and China. Okay. Now, I had put this into my studies about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and it was for the most part before we had all of that Ebola crap surface, and it was before ISIS. There was no ISIS 2 years ago to speak of. These characters cut people's heads off, just because you didn't know how to recite the Quran properly or something. Those guys, all right. That's the big terrorist group that, for the most part, didn't even exist 2 years ago, year and a half ago, so to speak. The Ebola, it did exist, obviously, but it wasn't. A couple of people died in America with it. They kind of tested the water with that one to see how people would react. And the other one is, of course, that Russia, up 2 years ago, hadn't started to move into Ukraine. So now we have all of the possibility of a Russian problem, serious. It's a serious problem. We have the problem of the diseases. They're all over the place now. We got measles breaking out. We got Ebola. We got all this gobbledygook happening again. And then, of course, the ISIS concept of terrorism, the possibility. The people of the United States in one day would buy into martial law if some people calling themselves ISIS had major terroristic events in 5 cities or states. The American people would accept martial law tomorrow.
Yeah, Bob, but this is the problem I have with that, is because that may be all true, but when the shit hits the fan and this thing passes, we're going to realize that our government was lying all this time. Are they going to be able to keep our loyalty?
Right. Now let me explain to you why that doesn't even. Don't even consider that. It doesn't even make any difference. Because here's where they are at, all right? They've been building and getting ready with our money. They've stolen all this money right out of our pockets. All right? When's the last time you think they even spent $1 to fix one bridge in the United States of America? The entire infrastructure, bridge, water ducts, water plants, generators, wire systems, all of that, every one of them in the United States of America are on the borderline of being condemned. That's how lousy they are. We're talking God knows how many, 500,000 bridges, for crying out loud. They have not spent a penny. That money went into their underground facilities. The foodstuffs was bought with our money. The tunnels were built with our money. All of that has been done secretly to prepare for locations for a limited number of people at the highest level to get out of town and get underground, period. When they close those doors to these facilities underground in the side of the mountains, martial law will already be in effect. The only people up there handling it are also being thrown to the wolves because the people handling a completely rioting civilization on the top of the ground with this stuff taking place. They don't care. There's no more allegiance. They don't care whether you like it or not.
Well, how are they going to roll over us?
Excuse me?
How are they going to roll over us after all this happens when the soldiers aren't going to fight for them because they're going to see that they were lied to?
Right. At some point in time, there's going to be that realization.
Right.
Now, by the way, and let me point this out because this is a big part of it. The amount of militarization of the police forces in the United States is totally beyond the dictatorial level already today as we speak. They have been training in a military direction since at least 1995 when I first saw grenade launchers, gas masks, tanks, troop carriers, 50 caliber machine guns and full automatics being delivered to the police stations around the entire nation of the world. I mean, every state in the nation here. Right. All right? And that started in the 90s. They have these programs where they actually will give a police station and a sheriff's department grenade launchers and all these things that I'm talking about, 50 calibers, riot-controlled tanks and machine guns, a 50 caliber machine gun, full automatics, and all this kind of stuff into these police forces. They've been doing it since 1994 that I know of. As of today, I have the amount of money, and by the way, that's in the DVD too. I have pictures of the sheriffs taking delivery on this stuff. I have the amount of money that's been spent. Why is the Forestry Service getting millions of dollars of full automatic weapons and riot control gear? Why is the IRS ordering thousands of bullets and thousands of machine guns under the banner of the IRS? Why is the Social Security system have purchase orders for the same kind of stuff? These are actually false billings in some cases, to where they're just saying that it's going to the Social Security. So what's the Social Security doing with machine guns? All right? So they've been doing that intentionally, and that's to build what is a military-controlled police force throughout the United States of America to control the riots, only to protect those people until they get down underground. Once they're underground and they shut those doors on the facilities, wait till you see the films and the pictures that I've got and the DVDs about this thing in terms of the underground facilities. The doors are constructed so that if an atomic bomb went off up on the top level, it won't even affect their doors. Nobody's going to be able to get any place. Then when we travel through, when we have Noah's floods and we have all the electrical power off, think about that one. I mean, that's something else too. The electricity gone, period. The entire globe, all the power off, all the satellites completely down 20 days before it even gets close. Just the effect on it. The satellites will be gone, done, finished, terminated. No more banking, no nothing. If you got any money any place, and it won't make any difference. What you're going to need is a place to hide and some food and weapons to protect your family.
Right, and any other money you have backed up, you just put it in gold, bury it.
Maybe. Food is going to be more valuable than gold.
Right. But if you have like $1 million or something, then you just then you buy what you need in food and seeds and weapons and shelter and all that other good stuff, and the remainder.
You better buy it. You better do some good timing on it.
Yeah.
I would say one thing: if they move on if it even appears that there's things developing that might be used as an excuse for martial law, people better really start paying attention before it happens.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now here's the back end of it. How bad is it going to be when this thing comes around? Well, the potentials are really frightening. One thing, of course, is like we talk about the Noah's floods type of a situation.
It's not going to be that bad this time.
Yeah, and that will happen from two things. One is the gravitational effect. People, again, it's a little thing that we don't think about, unless you're still in school, so to speak. But the moon is what moves. The little moon, this little non-entity out here, so to speak. That's what moves our tides in and out every day. Just the gravity of that and the sun. You kind of play in tennis with the water, so to speak, pulling it out, dragging it back, pulling it out, dragging it back.
And that's only a third of the size of the planet.
And it's nothing, in reality. All right, this thing coming by, and by the way, coming pretty fast too.
And made of iron, strong magnetic field.
Potentially made of iron. The gravitational effect would just yank the waters right out of the seabeds, and you got to remember the Earth's. How fast do you think the Earth revolves on its axis?
Very fast, about 800 miles per hour, and centrifugal force.
It's actually about 1,000 miles an hour.
Right, and the centrifugal force will cause all that water to go on all the coastlines.
Well, yeah. The problem is so that's one problem. Then the next problem we talked about with the Earth potentially passing through the tail of this thing, that would be the tail basically coming behind it. I don't know how long it would be, but that could be really long. But as long as it's going fast, really quick, that's good for us, so to speak, on one hand. But the tail would be the width, approximately, of the planet itself, all right, in terms of the width of the tail. And then it would diminish off from there. So depending on how quick or how soon the Earth would pass that 1 hour to go through that tail, depending on whether it's real close after the passing, going behind the sun, or if it's X numbers of time, hours after it's passed, that will have to do with how thick or how profuse the junk is going to be, because it will diminish the farther away it is from the body of the Nibiru. But you potentially have that storm of asteroids, meteor storms, or whatever you want to call it. The storm we would go through once and then go through the second time. It's going to be terrible. We witnessed a couple of years ago that tsunami that hit Japan and hit.
That's what I was going to ask. What about the effects on like the nuclear power plants and stuff like that?
That's another point. And by the way, I also covered that in the DVD. I really got the waterfront covered with this report. But in terms of the tsunami. All right, that tsunami that we witnessed, which was mind-boggling to us in modern times, because we are able to watch it in real time. being transmitted up, right, and back to our television.
Right.
And we watched that tsunami where the water just came and just kept coming, and it was like it was like a bulldozer, a liquid bulldozer, 1,000 miles long, and it just came right in and kept going and just wiped out entire giant buildings and communities and everything, and it just kept going like it wasn't even there. Turned everything into floating debris, floated 500,000 vehicles, for crying out loud. I mean, it was mind-boggling. Now, that came from the middle of the ocean, pretty much, that far away, way out in the ocean, and it was a little tiny earthquake hiccup. That's all it was. It was compared to a big one, okay, a giant one. It was just a kaboom and a collapse of a couple of miles underneath in the seabed, causing a big wave to start, and that's the tsunami. And it goes out 360 degrees from wherever that took place, travels at 500 miles an hour is like an average. 500-mile-an-hour wave, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger as it gets close to the shoreline, and of course just builds on itself. All right. Now that was a single hiccup, but it wasn't a gigantic earthquake. All right. I don't remember what it was, but it may have been a 5 or 7 or something like that. All right, which in downtown Los Angeles would be bad, but not in the middle of the ocean. But that tsunami did what it did. Now, the possibility of multitudes of meteorites or asteroid junk, space junk, the size of a school bus, hitting into all of the oceans, not counting the fact that you might get a couple of them in New York City or Los Angeles or wherever, any place on the globe, and that even the worst of it relates to where the frontal part. The worst part is probably going to be the front of the planet Earth when it goes through this tail of all this junk. Now, again, thinking in terms of it spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, and it will take about 1 hour for it to pass through it. The front will be changing, revolving, such that for that entire hour will be at least 1,000-mile front at any time going through all the space junk. If that made any sense to you, it'd be revolve. Yeah, right.
And the atmosphere at that point in time will be much more thin.
Yeah, so if you could take a marker and draw a line from the North Pole to the South Pole and held onto the Earth so it didn't move, and pushed it through this mess for an hour. Now you do the same thing and draw that line marker and have it spinning 1,000 miles an hour. In the 1 hour it will take from beginning to exiting the junk path, the tail of this thing, you will have had 1,000 miles exposed one time, and then 1,000 miles exposed as the frontal part of this thing the second time. And then, of course, everything behind it, it's hard to analyze what that would be. The mathematics on that is over my head. But, so what else do we have? So we got junk coming in. We have the gravitational effect on the water. We have what took place according to the people that have done the serious studies on this thing in history, found out that the Earth, during biblical times, the last time it came through, that it came around, was jogged off of its axis 26 degrees when it came around. Now, that can be gravitational, it can be magnetic, it could be, I don't know exactly what that would have been. But they verified that because in that sky disk that I mentioned earlier, where they found this drawing with gold and bronze, this huge disc showing the picture of the sky. It included, now remembering this was from Germany, It included the Orion belt, or excuse me, not Orion, the son of a gun, one of the constellations.
No, I know what you're saying. You know,
one
and
of the
supposedly the poles.
one of the constellations that normally would not be seen in Germany,
right,
in the sky at that time.
That's right.
All right, but it was on the bottom side of this plate, on this drawing, if you will. So on the basis of that, they did the calculations, and that should have been visible in Egypt, but it was visible in the German sky that day when it happened. So it means everything was moved 26 degrees. All right, and that mathematics can be done fairly easy. Now, they went out and they said, okay, if this really happened the way we think, and da-da-da-da-da, on this date, they went back through historic records all around the globe to see what had taken place during those dates in old historic scripture writings, etc., like the monks in Tibet, etc., the Chinese emperors, astronomers, etc. And sure enough, the entire globe was affected in radical weather, storms, winds, and all of the earthquakes, volcanoes, all those things were affected during that period of time, and they verified it around the entire globe. So again, it was one of the things that said, this isn't a hoax, folks. This is what happened. So, do you have any questions?
Oh yeah, a ton of questions.
But come up with one of them. But
yeah,
I'm going to get a drink of water.
Okay.
I'm drinking my water. Come up with a question.
Sure. Okay. Absolutely. I've been writing them down as we've been going along. So some people claim, and I don't want to take this too far out there because I know a lot of people who this is new to. We've already pushed them the limits as it is.
No question.
Right, but the Anunnaki, supposedly, the link to them, exactly. Okay, that's a part of the first question. I guess. Do these Anunnaki live on that planet? Do they come and visit here as the planet's passing by? Are some of them, or a good majority of them, going to leave as this 10th planet passes by, maybe 20 or 30 years from now? When it's way far out there. And also, are we telepathically linked to this thing? So if humanity evolves spiritually, will we collectively influence the amount of destruction that hits us? So can we limit destruction in that sense? I mean,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me approach a couple of these thoughts at this time. Okay. For the people that don't know what you're talking about, the Anunnaki is reportedly were the persons that were here before us, and actually potentially the story being that they had created that they came from another planet. All right, back whatever period of time it would have been, and that they would have been some of the first visitors from outer space, and that literally created many of the basically created human beings to work under their command to do mining, on the globe, on the globe of Earth, so that they could take gold back to their planet. And the implication is in the stories. Again, this was part of the clay tablets that I referred to, that were the Sumerian clay tablets describing the incoming of Nibiru. Now, according to the deciphering of those clay tablets, which, by the way, I equate it sort of like a diary of some people literally living and writing these things down 4,000 years ago, in the nation of Sumeria, which is now Iraq, Iran area on the globe today. And part of that story was, however, this is the important part. First off, some people, of course, still don't even believe in aliens and flying saucers and things of that sort. That's a mistake if you don't believe that exists. I'm afraid that's really a mistake, and it doesn't affect religion at all. The bottom line is some the very staunch Christian would say that God created the earth and the people on the earth, and that was the end of it. But see, that would shortchange my God, because why would he just take out of all of the unbelievable creation of the universe, of the whole thing, why would he just select one lousy little planet that's over here as his only location to put living beings? That doesn't make sense, even religiously, actually, if you apply common sense to your religion also.
Oh, UFOs and aliens no doubt exist. I mean, but what exactly are they? I mean, because...
Oh, yeah, right. And of course...
They could be demonic beings for all we know.
Well, and I would think, using good and evil as, black and white, left and right, being good over here and evil here, and we all pretty much know the difference between it. You can't say that you don't. I think the problem, and it remains to be seen, myself, I absolutely believe in alien life. I absolutely believe aliens exist on the face of the earth. Mm-hmm. I believe that aliens are working hand in hand with people at high levels of governments on the globe. I believe aliens affected Adolf Hitler. And that's a little spooky, because that would indicate, from our point of view, that they were giving a helping hand to the evil side. But we have to realize something, which is really scary stuff. First off, if you accept the fact that aliens are out there and have been zipping in and out of the globe of our Earth for tens of thousands of years, or maybe even 100,000 years, I don't know, which I do believe, absolutely, we have a real problem, and that is that we are no more advanced than a well-grown frog compared to them. And the idea of are they going to come to help us? That's been a question, assuming alien life exists, which I do believe. To not believe that is foolishness. Some of the admissions that we've gotten from...
I believe it lightly, Mr. Fletcher, but I mean, the only thing is, if they were some sort of beings, fifth-dimensional beings, for instance, demonic, whatever, fallen angels, they could make themselves appear however they want. So all these meetings with government officials, they could just say they are from some other planet.
Oh, well, whatever. But see, I've done it strictly and totally on the basis of the development of products and things of that in the last 50 years. Okay. There's no way that we went from horse and buggy to landing on the moon in 75 years. Right. Without assistance.
Right.
I'm sorry. And do you have any idea? When we get into this a little bit, if you want to, do you have any idea how many crop circles there are that have taken place in the last few years?
Oh yeah, I've seen a couple myself. I've seen dozens, probably at least 30 or 40 UFOs in my life.
Oh, okay, good. Now here's and that's great, because you're a step up on an awful lot of people by the fact that you had seen that many. Yeah. But the point I was going to make is like 25,000 crop circles over the last 20 years or so. The number gets mind-boggling, and the intricacy and what they are. Some of them are blueprints. Some of them are astronomical diagrams of space and outer space and planetary constructions. Some of it is medical. Some of it's other types of high-level scientific information. Now, why it's being delivered in that configuration, I'm not sure. But I will say that there are high-level people in the United States that know when they're going to be and when they're going to come, where they're going to show up, take the information down, and then whatever goes from there. Why that's happening, I'm not sure. But those are created by entities off of this earth.
Yeah.
There's no question about that.
Right.
I have very good video. I say very good. It's not very good. It's good enough to be understood. It's not not a Hollywood production video. But I have a couple of good videos of the 18 to 20 inch bronze-colored balls coming down and just going over the field and swinging around in a circle and creating an entire crop circle in 4 seconds.
Yeah.
We have that on film, see? We have that on film. Now, if you go to somebody and say, oh, I don't believe in anything, say, well, please explain this to me and to the Air Force.
Well, I'm 100% with you there. I mean,
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in terms of a lot of people ask, why doesn't, or do I think that there will be, let's call them space entities, that would come in and assist or help us or salvage us in the last minute before this takes place?
I hope so.
Apparently, they did not back during the time of the Sumerians, because the way the writings go in these clay tablets, the beings that they called Anunnaki, all right, those guys got back in their spaceships and left when they knew it was headed in. And they took off, and they left those mining, very low-level IQ grunts that were back here digging the holes and pulling out the gold and doing that stuff on their behalf, working like slaves, so to speak, or slave entities. They were stuck. They were just there. And the Anunnaki got in their spacecraft and got out of there before they hit the fan. So anyhow, it would appear, if they couldn't do it then, if they had the ability to come from either a planet that maybe one of them, it could be that one of the 5 moons going around with this with the planet X, it could be that there's life on one of those moons. I don't know, and I don't have any. That's my own supposition. So don't go any place with that. But that's a possibility. I don't think if and people say, well, why wouldn't they save us? Why wouldn't they salvage Earth, do what they could to protect it, etc. It could be that the blowing up or destruction of something like Nibiru would affect 5 other planets that are more important than Earth, someplace.
Right. No,
I
like the theory where they say that the aliens are leaving us alone because we are our own species and we are responsible for ourselves. And if we destroy ourselves, then that's just the way it's supposed to be. Right.
Okay, but that doesn't bring into account Nibiru. You follow me? On that part of it. The idea that we make our own bed and we got to sleep in it, that certainly is true, and we've not broken any great records in terms of humanity for the last 1,000 years. That's for sure. We are the most messed up thing that you could ever imagine. Well, you watch television, you watch the news. What in the world? And the programs that are popular, the junk that's popular on television embarrasses me And like I said,
Right.
I told you I was in the rock and roll business. It takes a lot to embarrass me. You know, go on the road with the Who like I did. Takes a lot to rattle my cage. But the Earth, speaking just for America, shame on us. The
Right.
condition we're in right now, shame on us all,
I
as far
agree.
as that's concerned. And I don't want to get into don't want to become a preacher here, but
No.
that's the best way to put it, I'll tell you. Shame on us.
I have a creepy question for you.
Go ahead, I'm ready for creepy.
This one might creep you out of it. So, like you mentioned earlier, how the Anunnaki created humans to mine gold. I agree with that, and so
let me say this now, so people don't get the wrong idea. That is the study of Dr. Sitchin, who was a fellow that did the analysis of the clay tablets from Sumeria, and that was his story. Okay, so go from there.
So so what if when they're about to pass, and since Nibiru is supposedly their home planet or home star or whatever, or one of the planets orbiting Nibiru. So what if when they pass, what if like that whole rapture story is true, and what if it's not God taking us up, but what if it's these aliens, and what are they going to do? Are they going to eat us? Are they just going to start eating a lot of the population, like cattle?
Well, see, the big problem is we don't know, and it's my belief. Again, it's just from studying just a multitude of things that many years ago I could have cared less. But unfortunately, I've been put in a position where I've had to study things that I may not have had an interest in. But we don't know. Let's take the average these grays that are been reported as a primary worker that's here all the time. Flying in on the different things and doing the experiments on people that have been picked up.
They scare the hell out of me.
Yeah. Okay, it would, boy, if you weren't scared. If you were picked up by one and a group of them and put up and had experiments done on you.
They are the red UFOs, and if I see a red UFO, I do a prayer real fast and just I command it to leave, basically. And they are very much telepathically linked, so they will usually listen.
So we get to talking about the Greys. I think the Greys are a working class, a programmed entity to carry out tasks. I think they are predominantly the characters that are manning the UFOs, the saucers, and things of that sort. Some of them are unmanned, just non-remote controlled objects. Some of them are controlled, like I say, a saucer, like the ones that crashed in Roswell, and it was 2 or 3 of them that crashed there. According to FBI papers that I have from Hoover, FBI Director Hoover at that time. Anyhow, I think they are just a working class, sort of a robot, if you will, and they carry out what they're supposed to, and that there is other thinking entities above them that would control them, and et cetera, et cetera. According to my wife is just telling me what time it is. According to I totally lost my direction here. I believe those little entities, they are what they are, and I think a remote control situation. According to many people that have come forward with a thing called the Discovery Project? I think that's what it is.
The taller ones are clones.
The Disclosure Project, that's what it is. Disclosure Project. These guys, a couple of them I know personally. Their summation is that there's as many as 300 individual different space entities that have been coming in and out for so long in around Earth, and there's that many of them.
300 different types of alien species. Yep.
Yes, I think that was the number that they had come up with. And the craft, when you really get into it, and as a couple of our astronauts, a couple of the guys, what's his name, went on the moon, Edgar Mitchell. Edgar Mitchell went on to the moon a couple of times, twice I think. He I have the recording of it. As soon as they landed, he said, "Oh, they're here. They're ahead of us, and their craft is parked up on the edge of the crater over there, and it's gigantic, and I can't believe it, but they're here." And just like we talked about, they're already up here waiting for us. And you go to the fellow that was in charge of Skunk Works operations that created all our spacecraft designs and all of that. Just before he died, he said, "We have been flying. We have had the capability to go to the outer planets and fly around the planets for years and years." And he says it's never going to be made public, but we've been doing it for years and years. And when these guys at that level, he had no reason to lie. He was dying, I mean, literally on a deathbed kind of a thing. He said, "We've been doing that for," and they're talking about warping space and time. It's the only way you can go between the planets, etc. That is
portal wormhole
has been an old theory for long. And the truth is, and by the way, you get into that a little bit in the DVDs. The bending space and time is the only way. You can literally end up going forward in time, back in time. Time and space is a graphic entity that can be varied and altered. And once you can figure out how to bend it, you can instantaneously go from a craft 50 miles over top of New York City to 50 miles over top of the moon.
Anywhere.
And do it within a blink of an eye. These entities that do exist out there, they have that ability. But they also have the ability to help us or not. And I don't think the way the people at the highest levels of our corrupted government have been scurrying around building their rat holes to hide in, I don't think they've had any indication that any space entity is going to come down and help us out when Nibiru comes back again.
I think they will.
That's good. Well,
I think they're going to be crushed underneath their underground cities.
Excuse me?
I
don't know. And I don't know. It's
a global earthquake here. When this thing passes and the tectonic plates realign and they move back up, this is going to be a worldwide earthquake.
Right.
Every place will be at least a 9.0 on the Richter scale. Some places 15.0.
Yeah. I believe it will be. We're looking. If it does not get pulled away, in a manner such that it doesn't do this major damage, we're going to have tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanoes, meteor storms, and all of the above in a very short period of time on the globe. I don't know how well off these people are going to be underground with their facilities. I'm going to get out of here. But you mentioned it earlier, and you want to have another little thing to just add to the soup here, so to speak. We have 130 nuclear power plants in the United States.
Yeah.
And when they go through their melt thing, it only takes one, but
that's when we're going to need their help.
If half of them go through this meltdown situation because there's no way to control them, so you're talking 100 years before the general area, any one of those is even livable again.
Yeah. And if all of them go off, you can forget about it. So we're definitely going to need their help.
So the whole thing, yeah, I'll tell you one thing, there will be a lot of people praying that never believed in God.
Yep.
That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, that's another thing. Like Revelations, it mentions, Jesus will come in the sky as a thief in the night and all that stuff. But I believe a lot of that stuff is just symbolism for Nibiru. And when people see Nibiru and they see all this destruction, they're going to realize that a lot of what they learned in the Bible was symbolism and that the government was lying to. I don't think anybody's going to trust the government, especially the people who work under them in the military. The military people that they have trying to protect them as bodyguards. They're going to turn on them, I think.
They're not going to know when the martial law is declared. Basically, they'll just go in. That's total militarily controlled every street corner, so to speak. Right. But they're not going to know. They're going to be convinced it's because of terrorism or Ebola disease or this thing or that thing. They're not going to be told what it is. By the time that's again, I'm going to say 4 to 6 months ahead of the first sightings. See, then when the sightings take place, the bad guys, they're already going to be down their hideouts, and they don't care what goes on. They're just going to lock the doors and start eating their dry foods.
True.
And they're going to be praying that some of them come through it. And I have no idea how long they think they may have to be underground, but they will have to be for a pretty long time.
A long time,
because according to archaeologists digging up the old dirt that gives that story, the scientific story of what took place, by digging into the dirt and doing the layer thing. The last time Nibiru passed close, it was 100 years of no vegetation in the dirt.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, sports fans. Hey,
right,
listen, too bad we didn't have anything to talk about.
Yeah, right. Dude, we could keep going for hours. I know this.
Yes.
We could just ping pong back and forth. Have a great time.
And if anybody's interested, you have to get this DVD.
Yeah,
and it has all the answers and pictures, everything that you wished you could get.
Yeah.
If you had something to show your friend.
Where can we find this DVD at?
Go only one place, and that's go on my website, BobFletcherInvestigations.com. Awesome. That's BobFletcherInvestigations.com. It's on there. Go to its first page will show you how to get your copy of the thing. It's really great. The feedback has been mind-boggling, and I will say in December I had 180,000 hits on my website.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And in terms of the people that have gotten the disc for themselves, the feedback for the most part has just been wonderfully good. So you got to get it. It's unfortunately it may be terrible news, but I don't know. I think it's better to know what's happening rather than just be shaken out of the bed one day and.